Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Wherever you are in this fine world, we want to welcome you to our webinar for today, The Survivalist Guide to Data-Driven Marketing, brought to you by Marketo and CMSWire. I'm Tom Murphy, General Manager and Editorial Director for Simpler Media Group, the publisher of CMSWire. I cover collaboration, marketing, analytics, and a lot more. But I am also the author of Web Rules, How the Internet is Changing the Way Consumers Make Choices, and boy, hasn't it. Good news for our listeners today, we'll be having a giveaway, 2 free gold passes for the Digital Publishing Innovation Summit coming up December 10 and 11 in San Francisco. Folks, this is a $1,795 value, and we'll be announcing the winner immediately after the Q&A, so please stick around for your chance to win. A brief look at our agenda today. I'll finish up with these introductions in a couple of minutes, and then we'll introduce Heidi Bullock, Vice President for Demand Generation at Marketo, and then the part of the program that I always like best, and our guests do too, the live Q&A featuring you, our audience. If you have questions during the program, please let us know by going to the Q&A section down on the bottom right there, selecting all panelists for the send, and sending them to us, or you can send them to us through Twitter at CMSWire. To use the chat window on the right side, perhaps to contact our host and let them know you're having a technical problem or some other issue that comes up, you simply just choose the chat window. You may need to open it by clicking chat at the top of your screen, and then you click host or panelist or whatever you need to do and send your message. Similarly, in the Q&A session, it's really easy just to add your question, select all panelists, and click the send button. And we'll take care of it from there. We'll put it on our list of questions for the end of the program. You can ask questions at any time during the program. We also have 2 interactive polls in this program. One to start off, and then we'll have another one later on. You'll see 2 things happen. One, you'll see a screen slide that will tell you that it's a poll, and then you'll see a window open on the bottom right corner of your screen. At that point, please go to that window, click your choice, and click the submit button on the lower right so that we can record your vote. We would like to see everybody participate in our poll, so please take a moment to do that. Little about CMSWire. We're about 11 years old. We have over 400 editorial contributors. About half of them are practitioners, probably just like you. We publish over 200 articles a month. We have tweet jams, hangouts, webinars. We have monthly editorial themes. We cover digital marketing, enterprise collaboration, enterprise information management, a lot more. It's a fun site. It's a good community. Please get involved. We love to see your comments under stories. We love to get suggestions for stories through our submissions blank at the bottom. So please check out our site if you don't visit it every day. As noted earlier, this session is sponsored by Marketo, which provides easy and powerful marketing automation software with everything a marketer needs. Please visit them at marketo.com. Without further delay, it's my distinct pleasure to introduce our distinguished guest, Heidi Bullock, VP of Demand Generation at Marketo. Heidi has over 10 years of B2B marketing experience in high-tech companies, and expertise that includes positioning, brand development, online advertising, and direct marketing. Heidi will be talking about methodology, revenue cycle, and analytics. So let me just say a brief welcome to Heidi. Hello, Heidi.
Thanks, Tom. I appreciate the intro.
Great. And now, big treat, we're going to go to our first polling question, which you'll see pop up on the lower right side if this is all working properly. And the question is, how many of you know what profits could be generated with 10% more budget? Interesting question. And there's the poll window on your right side there. So please click one of those 3 choices. I do, I don't, and don't know. And then click the submit button on the lower right, and we will record your vote and tally them and get back to you. Again, we'd like to see everybody participate in the poll, so please take a moment to do so. Heidi, you think they do? You think they don't? You think they're not sure? What do you think?
I'm guessing a few of them do, and I'm guessing a lot of them might not know how. Not because they don't want to, but because there's just challenges.
There certainly are, and we're going to be talking about those in some depth today. I'm going to put my money on I'm not sure. I see our poll has ended, and our results will be popping up in just a moment here.
Fun.
We should have a drum roll for this part of the program, shouldn't we?
I think you guys need to get one.
Yeah, a little marching band or something. Okay, I can tell that. There we go. The results are in. Let me see. I'm not seeing a full return here. We have 7% say they know. 33% say they don't. Thank you for being honest. 26% say they don't know. About a third of our sample didn't answer. Folks, we're going to expect those third to answer first in the second poll today. So without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Heidi now.
Great.
Let me just give you the controls here, Heidi. And you can take it away.
All right, perfect. Thanks again, Tom, for the intro and the fun poll. So
You're very welcome.
I just want to start by kind of setting the stage, everyone, with some data. And what this slide is showing, and I just think this is a good place to start, that many marketing projects fail to use available or requested marketing analytics according to this data from a CMO survey. And the study indicates on average that only 32.5% of projects leverage analytics. And I guess what's positive here, it's a slight improvement over the last few years, but other data shows that CMOs want to spend more, forecasting an average of about 12.2% of their budgets to be spent on analytics in the next 3 years, compared to an average of about 7.1 currently spent. And so what I take away from this is that CMOs and everyone listening today, you know analytics are important, but often you might not have the people or skills in place to get what's needed. And here's actually what can happen, which is what I want to touch on today. And you might recognize this from the poll. So say your CEO or CFO comes to you and says, hey, what profits could be generated with 10% more budget? And we saw the results today from the poll. But according to this data from Lens School Group, the most common answer to this is, I don't know. And 44% of marketers have no idea what a budget increase could do for their companies. And let me just touch on this. If you fit into this 44%, you're going to experience difficulty protecting your budget and will likely find yourself asking the question the other way around. What will happen now that my budget has been decreased by 10%? That's bad. You don't want that to happen. So you can't expect your organization to place value on something you really can't quantify. But when you do use the right metrics and processes, there's nothing more powerful to help you earn your rightful seat at the revenue table. And yet from the previous slide, we can see that it's really, really tricky to do. So we know analytics are critical, but there's still marketers like you, like many people I speak to, not adopting them at the rate we'd expect. And so today what I want to do, I want this to be a really practical session, and I want to touch on some methodology and tips that my hope is, these can be helpful whether you're at a large enterprise or a small company. And one other kind of point for today, I just want to encourage you to think of this as a journey and focus on progress, not perfection. That's one of my favorite things, because let's face it, all businesses, we're all faced with a lot of challenges, and you're not going to go back and fix this all today. But the hope is we'll get started. So first off, I want to show you this slide because to me there are very different levels of metrics and reporting. And it's good to be clear about the different level and metrics that matter. And I really like this framework. And so if you look at this, there at the top, there are corporate level metrics. And so you might want to think of, your revenue, profits, market share. There are operational metrics such as, staff efficiency, increased product values, things like that, increased customer satisfaction and loyalty. And then number 3, you have execution metrics. And this is really where you get into the nitty-gritty of your program analytics, your campaigns, things like that. And it's going to probably vary for your business, but I think it's important to hone in on a few kind of KPIs, key performance indicators across these areas that are going to be helpful for your business. And I'm just kind of highlighting that they are different and you don't really want to blend them. So now let's dive into some cool tips that I think will be helpful. And the first success secret I want to talk about is to agree on definitions for what metrics matter and what key stakeholders need to see. And I'm going to provide a simple example of why this is so important. But I just want to highlight, I have a URL on the screen that is, we have a great ebook at Marketo, How to Define a Lead. And so if anyone out there needs help on that, I just want to put that up on the slide so you guys can steal that. But let's go into why this is so important. This is a fun one. So let's use a trade show as an example. What metric matters? And you'll see on the left, is it the number of scans you get? That's interesting. Is it the number of high-quality demos, or is it pipeline? And if you run the events team, it may be a high number of quality demos, but if you're reporting back to your CFO, my guess is it's probably going to be pipeline. And it is really important to agree on what metrics matter for the type of person or stakeholder you're speaking with. And I just can't emphasize this enough. I think in many cases, there's going to be things your team cares about, and you should look at, program metrics. But keep in mind, if you're speaking to a CEO or CFO or even your VP of marketing, keep in mind it's probably not going to be scans from a trade show. It's probably going to be pipeline. It's just important to make that distinction. Now, the last example was a good one because it highlights the differences between the types of metrics. And I want to touch on a few metrics I think you should steer clear of. And the first one is vanity metrics. And too often, we all rely on feel-good measurements to justify marketing spend. And so instead of pursuing metrics that measure business outcomes and improve marketing performance and profitability, marketers opt for metrics that sound good and impress people. So let me give you some examples. That could include press release impressions, Facebook likes, names gathered at trade shows. And you want to also avoid measuring activity, rather focus on measuring results. And you want to avoid focusing on quantity, and you want to really think about quality metrics. So I just want to touch on those. That's just a really important distinction. So if you can, again, maybe your team is going to measure Facebook likes, but think about when you're speaking to C-level folks, probably to avoid those. Now, the next set are my least favorite. Please avoid these. The worst kind of metrics are cost metrics because they frame marketing as a cost center. And if you only speak about costs and budgets, then others are going to associate your activities with costs. And let me give you an example. Let's take a marketer who improved cost per lead by $10. Based on these great results, she went to the CEO to ask for budget. Did the marketer get her budget? No. The CEO decided that the reduced lead cost meant marketing could deliver the same results with fewer dollars. And so the CEO cut the marketing budget and used the extra funds to hire new salespeople. So what went wrong here? The marketer performed well, but she made the mistake of not connecting her marketing results to bottom line metrics that mattered to the CEO. So by framing her results in terms of cost, she perpetuated the perception that marketing is a cost center. And within this context, it's only natural the CEO would reduce costs and reallocate the extra budget to a revenue-generating department like sales. So think about using terms. This is a key takeaway from today. Think about investment per lead. Say that. Don't say cost per lead. That's one of my biggest pet peeves. And really think about the terminology and language you use and how you're perceived. Very important. So let's go to success secret number 2. And this is, again, really important. Set your goals up front with key stakeholders. And your first step is to quantify your expected outcomes. And all too often, marketers plan programs and commit their budgets without establishing a solid set of expectations about what impact they expect the program to have. And this is a terrible habit, and it's one of the underlying reasons why execs like CFOs question marketing investments. And the solution is to assign upfront goals, benchmarks, and KPIs for each marketing program. And it is really important before you start any program to make sure that, again, your team and stakeholders are aligned on objectives and outcomes. And again, I have this little example that I popped on the slide. Feel free to steal this, but this is one that I do for trade shows because trade shows can be kind of a tricky type of program, and a lot of people feel they're very expensive and don't show a lot of value. So what I did here is I met with my particular head of marketing, and I reviewed the reasons why I think this event has value and how I want to look at success over time. And the timing element is important because you will most likely see, like I'm showing on this slide, you're not going to see close-won deals at the exact time of the event. That never happens. So you really want to talk about what you're going to see kind of pre-event, during the event, and then post-event. And I think setting those goals and kind of when you're going to be looking at key metrics is really, really important. So you can see here, pre-event, we might be looking at engagement, number of downloads on an asset. Maybe you do a pre-event campaign. During the event, you could say, look, we got X number of demos. We had 500 people attend our talk. Post-event, maybe do an exciting follow-up with your slides, look at the downloads. But to kind of that C-level folks, C-level team, you're going to say, look, we're going to see leads and opportunities probably in the April-May timeframe and close-win deals closer to June. So I just want to touch on that. So setting that up front. Now let's go to success secret 3. And once you've identified what your goals look like, you need to figure out how you're going to measure success. And this is important. You need to design your programs to be measurable. And this is key because if you don't have a way to measure impact, it will be almost impossible to report back on your goals. And here, using marketing automation like Marketo, it's easy to look at metrics that I'm showing on this slide. This is actually just pulled from Marketo. For a webinar, I can look at early metrics like attended all the way down to pipeline, which clearly is obviously very important. And what I'm highlighting here is, marketing automation makes something like this easy. That being said, if you're not using marketing automation, just think about what is it you want to be able to show your C-suite, and think about ways of building those metrics into the program. So at the end of it, you're not having to go back because it's really tough to do looking back. Now, success secret number 4, this is a fun one. Focus on decisions that improve marketing. And a key part of your planning process is to identify upfront what decisions you need to make to drive company profits, and then build your measurements to capture the right information. And this is a huge one, you guys. This means you should measure things not just because they're measurable, but rather because they will guide you towards the decisions you need to improve company profitability. And this is a key thing for me. Like the dashboard in your car, 3 to 5 metrics are all you really want. Look at this image. The Audi on the right-hand side is a lot more appealing than the dashboard of the 747. And all I'm showing here is I see marketers often, you want to measure everything under the sun, and you just don't need to. Think about keeping it simple and then focus on what you're going to do to actually improve performance. If you're collecting metrics just to collect them, that's really not going to help you at the end of the day and is not going to provide a lot of value. And here, this is kind of a nice framework for you to think about, and it's a good way to think about the right metrics. And my hope is that this can serve as a helpful taxonomy when you're developing your benchmarks or even want to improve on your current set. And the first one are really performance metrics, and that's kind of answering the question, how did you do? And you want to be able to really touch on that. You've got your diagnostic metrics, and those are kind of to help you say, what's working, how can we improve? And importantly, too, you also want to look at leading indicators. And these are kind of metrics that should help you forecast how you will be doing. And that's kind of the holy grail of what you want to be able to get to. And I will give you examples of all of these in this presentation. But this is a really good framework just to think about, looking at, how did we do as a team? If you're present, what's working? What programs are successful, and what can we do better? And then ideally, how can we take those successful programs and kind of build a model for how we will do in the future? And that's really what you want to think about. So now let's switch gears a little bit and talk about the revenue cycle. And what I want to do is I want to spend some time walking you through how Marketo thinks about our marketing and sales funnel. And I think my hope is, again, this is just a good inspiration and example for what you can use. So, one thing successful sales organizations have historically done well is they break up the sales process into stages, and they often have the technology and sales process to do this. And in many cases, this is within somebody's CRM system. So, your Salesforce, your Microsoft Dynamics, that type of thing. But now, marketing is responsible for a bigger portion of the revenue cycle, and it's important that marketing applies the same rigor to defining our stages of the revenue cycle that sales does for theirs. And what I'm showing you is what we do at Marketo, and we break this down into 3 buckets, starting with TOFU, and that just means top of funnel. Then we've got MOFU, which is middle of funnel, and this is, where the focus is on marketing, getting leads ready to have a conversation with sales. And then bottom of funnel, BOFU, and that's really once sales is engaged. And this process is really central to everything we do at Marketo, and in defining these stages rigorously with sales, in my opinion, is really the most important thing we did in building our revenue process at Marketo. And so I'm going to walk through each of these stages in more detail because it's really a foundation of what I'm talking about today. And what I want to highlight is you might have different stages for your business. It's completely okay. Yours could look different. But my point here is that you need to sit down and define these stages with sales and just make sure that you agree upon these and have alignment. It's really important. So for us at Marketo, let's dive into this. It's going to be fun. So the first stage is awareness, and this is really all about building our brand. And what we do really here is all around inbound marketing. We do a lot with content marketing, and this is really attracting people to us as a company, driving awareness. And again, this is not us paying for people's attention. This is us putting out great thought leadership content. So really important to think about that particular stage. Now let's move to the next stage. And this is really where we call this a friend stage. And this is kind of a subset of awareness. And this is someone who they've heard of us, but now they really have a positive association with our brand and they've learned to like us. Now, this is where it gets crazy exciting. Wow, you see we crossed the red dotted line. This is where we're actually now entering into our database. This is where we're collecting names of folks, and we have their contact information. But this is where semantics matter. And these people, you will notice, I am not calling these leads. They're just names. And many of these folks are not interested, and they're never going to be interested in buying from us. And let me give you an example of this. This could be a student that's downloaded a white paper. And the semantics here are important because if marketers call these leads and they're not what salespeople consider leads, you're not going to have alignment. So again, this could also be trade show scans. At the end of the day, your sales team is not going to care about that. So the next stage is engaged, and this is someone who has really now had a meaningful interaction with us. And so let me give you an example. They put their card in a bowl at a trade show, and that could be because they wanted to win an iPad, and they might not remember even doing this when they get home. But let's say now they respond to a follow-up campaign. And so with that, they're no longer a name. They've engaged. They've taken a meaningful action with us. And we, again, they're in the Marketo database, but they're still not somebody that I would consider qualified. Now we get to a stage, and I report on this next stage weekly. These to us are called targets. And the target stage represents someone who's engaged with us and who is also a potential customer. They're the right kind of person at the right kind of company. And so this is not a student doing research or a job seeker. This is really somebody that has the right demographics and right behavior. So let me give you an example. At Marketo, that would be somebody who is a VP of marketing, and maybe they visited our pricing page and maybe downloaded a white paper. And again, these are still not what I'm calling leads. They're just qualified potential customers. And we need to keep in touch with these people over time until they're ready to become customers. Now, it's this next stage. This is the big deal for me, and I actually report on this. I have a goal around this number here. These are what we call leads, and these are MQLs, so marketing qualified leads. These have a score, so a lead score of greater than 100, and that's really important. And that means they have taken enough activities, they've done enough things to get to a sort score, gaining enough points of 100. And at this point, this is really where we will pass these off to a sales development rep. This is an inside salesperson who will then call and qualify the lead. And so you can see we take a lot of steps before we're actually getting to a stage that we consider somebody a lead. Now, again, these folks are going to be qualified by a sales development rep, and basically we see about 5 to 10% of them that get qualified as being in an active buying cycle, deemed sales ready, looking to make a purchase in the next 6 months, and then they get passed to an AE, an account executive, and the sales rep has a 1-week period to determine whether or not the opportunity exists. And at Marketo, I'm actually incentivized on opportunities. That's how I'm measured for my success. So this is really an important point, and I definitely want to highlight this to everyone listening. So if the sales rep believes an opportunity exists, they enter that into the CRM. And keep in mind, marketing doesn't do this. The sales development rep doesn't do this. Only the sales rep does this. And so, I carry a quota based on opportunities, but it means if marketing hits my quota, there should be enough pipeline for sales to hit theirs. And so we really are aligned, and we're working off really the same goals, and that's what I want to touch on. It's super, super important. So that's, ideally kind of a quick pass through of our marketing and sales funnel. And then ideally, folks become a customer, and we have a whole additional process there that we kind of, do with customers. And so now it looks like we have our second poll, which I'm sure Tom will go through, and this is pretty exciting as well.
Thank you, Heidi. Really great presentation so far. I'm learning a lot. I'm sure our listeners are too. And our second polling question is, what is your top challenge today regarding measurement? A, they are too complex and difficult to use. B, I do not have the data or the budget required. C, I do not have the time for this type of work. And D, there are too many. I don't know where to start. So the panel on the right side is where you vote. This time we'd like to see everybody in our audience pick a choice. please pick A, B, C, or D, and then click the Submit button on the lower right. Don't forget to do that or your vote won't count. Heidi, once again, I turn to your expertise. People are going to say they're too complex and difficult, or don't have the budget required, or the data, or the time. Which do you think they're going to go for?
Well, I think all of these are factors, but my understanding, just from looking at recent data and just from what I see, I find most marketers totally get metrics are important, but often they literally don't have the right data. And I think, we especially see this on the enterprise side, just collecting the right data, having it in a format that folks can use, really, really tricky problem.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. Marketers are still having a hard time getting their heads around data. And I see our results are up now, so let me see what the audience really said. First answer is they are too complex and difficult to use. About 10% of our audience went there. Second, I do not have the data or budget required, about 14%. Third is I don't have the time, 11%. And there are too many, I don't know where to start, 16%. 49% of our audience could not figure out which choice they wanted. So we don't know where they're at, but I'm going to think most of them would be in that last category. They just don't know where to start. So it's an interesting poll, and I hope it guides your discussion going forward. And I'm going to turn the microphone back over to you.
Great, thanks. All right, so now let's dive into analytics. And this is the last section of the presentation today. And, I really want to talk about program measurement because, again, just even with this poll, we can see this is tough for everybody. And I just want to highlight with this next slide, this is the elusive revenue table that we all want to see at. And, one of the things we hear a lot today in speaking with CMOs, especially when I have conversations with folks, is that their biggest pain point is having the ability to prove the impact marketing is having on revenue. And, sales typically does a great job presenting their forecast and what they expect to bring in terms of revenue. And again, CRM systems make it really easy to do that. But what tools do you and marketing have available today? And, today where marketing owns 50 to 80% of the revenue cycle, you really need to have an equal voice in these discussions. So tools that enable you to get the analytics you need are very, very critical. And I just want to highlight that today. It's super important. But as you know, marketing measurement, it's hard. I think everyone out there would agree with this. And it's hard for a number of reasons. First of all, people who buy Marketo, just to use my own example, they don't simply respond to one marketing campaign and buy. I deeply wish that was the case. Rather, it's a journey where on average, they're responding up to about 7 different campaigns. They might come in via a trade show and then download one of our definitive guides and watch a webinar. And it takes 7 campaign successes typically before a purchase is made. And further complicating matters is there's not just one buyer. Again, would love it if that was the case. So, what if you have 2 buyers and they both come into the process at different times through different campaigns? And, at Marketo, we've seen as many as 21 people involved in the buying decision. And by the way, we don't recommend that, but it's the case, and we see it. And so how do you measure ROI with that kind of complexity? And that's a real trick. So I just kind of want to show you that, going back to our first slide, how can we make this easier and leverage marketing analytics? And what I want to show you, and this is a screenshot from Marketo, and it's our Opportunity Influence Analyzer. This is really cool, and I think you guys will like this. And the horizontal axis shows time, and the vertical axis shows the number of marketing interactions we've had with this account. And so the green portion, which is kind of in the middle, shows when the opportunity is created in the CRM system. And for us, we use Salesforce. And so by default, we're showing the people attached to this deal based on them having roles in Salesforce. And what you see is sales has interacted heavily with contacts during the time the opportunity was created. You see all those orange dots. So it appears like if you look at the blue kind of area to the left, wow, it doesn't look like marketing had a lot to do with this. But if you look more closely to the contacts on the right, you can see Sarah Geller, who happens to be their CEO, had 11 interactions over time. So let's get a different view. So let's click on her name, and now this is what we see. So we get a complete view of how this deal was won. So now you can see there's a lot more orange dots on the left side. So marketing was keeping in touch with Sarah long before this opportunity was created. And all I'm showing you here, what we're looking at, is all the different marketing programs that she interacted with prior to an opportunity being created. And so this is a really important story for us to be able to tell. We can see Sarah downloaded a definitive guide, which for us is just a very nice ebook Marketo puts out. She went to an event just before the opportunity was created. And really, only when you have a marketing system that can show you all these touches, that's the only way you're really going to understand how your marketing dollars are driving revenue. Let me give you an example of this. This is super cool. So I want to touch on multi-touch attribution, and this is a fun example. And what we're looking at here is a deal worth $100,000, and 3 people were involved in the deal. And what I want to show you is once you have all the data, you can start to allocate pipeline or revenue from a deal across all marketing touches to really truly understand the ROI of each campaign. And this is really what's called multi-touch revenue attribution. And most marketers out there are only going to look at first touch. And so let's do that. So in many cases, what we'd say is the webinar would be the first touch. That's where maybe these folks first heard about Marketo, and we'd say, wow, the webinar should get $100,000 worth of that revenue attribution. But would that be correct and would be looking at the full story? Absolutely not. With multi-touch, and this, again, really important to do, what we will say is the webinar will get $25,000, great program for bringing people in, but the trade show and the direct mail piece each should get some attribution as well, and they were great for really accelerating these people through the marketing and sales funnel. And that's really what you want to be able to understand, right? It's not just the first program that brings somebody in to your company and gets them excited. It's what are those marketing programs that are pushing them along. And here I want to show you, this is all data that I pull out of Marketo. And so I'm looking at multi-touch data, and we can get a deep understanding of how our marketing activities are driving pipeline and revenue, and we can prove it. And I just want to show you, I want to make this really simple. I know this could seem kind of like an eye chart, but all I'm doing is I'm looking at the program channels that I'm using, the investment, and then the pipeline that's created. Let me give you some examples. As channels, we might say pay-per-click, trade show, blog. These are all the channels, and we want to really understand what is working. And so the next slide I'm showing is that my inbound marketing programs and my nurture programs are creating 58% of multi-touch pipeline, which is great. And then my paid programs, 42% of multi-touch pipeline. So that's kind of the first question I want to be able to ask is, of my channels, what's successful, what isn't. And again, think of this really like a stock portfolio. There's going to be your star channels, and there's still other channels. For us, I'll give you an example. It's social paid, not the top performer, but there's reasons we still want to do it for driving awareness. So that's your first question. What are your channels? Now, another useful metric, and I just want to highlight this, is we use something called a multi-touch ratio. And this is really looking at pipeline to investment. And again, this is, the ratio of pipeline each channel generates compared to the investment we've made in that channel. And that's so one big deal doesn't skew a channel and make it seem better than it actually is. Now for us, in a multi-touch ratio greater than 10 is good. And what I say is, yes, we should do more of that. If anything falls below a 5, I say it gets about, a 12.8, so it's pretty good. Now with this channel view, the next step you want to say is let's go into each channel and see what's working. And this is really an important exercise. I love this. So our trade show channel has an average multi-touch ratio of 12, but that's an average. If we dig into a program view, we'll see that almost half our trade shows fall below the minimum threshold of 5. So in other words, they're losing us money. So we want to be very selective about which trade shows we participate in. And I'm sure many of you out there see this as well. So if you just, again, all I'm doing is I'm looking at the trade show channel, and overall you're like, wow, looking good, but it's the programs within that you really want to do further examination. As a side note, you can see a percentage, 56% of our channels are currently meeting a minimum threshold of 5. So what you can say is that means 44% are losing money. So our job as marketers is continuing to push that percent higher. And again, this is real Marketo data. I'm being completely transparent. But so what I love about this is I know exactly what programs are working and which are not. And so, by the way, you should have programs that are not working. And I believe in that, everyone. If you are not, you're not experimenting enough. So you could say, wow, Heidi, there's some programs here that you have that are some clunkers. But again, I want to be pushing the envelope, and I encourage you to do that as well. But ultimately, you want most of your programs to be successful. So I hope that made sense. I think this is a very, very good way to look at programs. And again, my team, we have a meeting on this every month where we go through our channels and then specifically the programs within those channels, because that's where we really see the variability. So this is really how we measure ROI, and we like to look at the aggregate impact marketing's having on pipeline, and then that comes back to the funnel we started with, and we want to know how deals are moving through this funnel. So this, to me, is really important, and once we understand how the revenue process works, we use this information to set our budget. So at Marketo, we don't simply say marketing should be 7% of revenue or some arbitrary number. We say we need this many wins in order to achieve the revenue targets we set. And since we have a deep understanding of how the revenue process works, including conversion rates and velocity, we simply work backwards. We know how many opportunities we need, how many SQLs, so sales qualified leads, how many MQLs and targets we need, and as we see, some of the wins will come from existing targets and MQLs. And then we really build our budget for marketing programs that will drive the wins we need to hit our targets. And that's really powerful, because if someone comes to us and says, me specifically, I need to take 10% out of your budget, I will say, okay, you can do that, but it's going to have a 12% impact on revenue next quarter. What do you want to do? And that is really the position that you want to be in. I feel very strongly about that. Now, you might have remembered, we touched on this earlier, this also lets us look forward, and it helps us make forecasts. So again, we're not just talking about what happened, but what will happen. And we show it like this. Within each row, we can show how many opportunities we did create and how many we'll create the month after that. And so all I'm looking at here, everyone, is just it's a forecast of opportunities. And this is really one of the most critical things I think marketers can do to build credibility, is that ability to forecast. So you can say, if I have this budget, this size team, this is what I should be able to accomplish. And again, I just want to point people to, we have great definitive guides on our website. They're free. And so there's one on marketing metrics if you want to dive into this a bit further. So just some quick takeaways. Again, I went through a lot of points, but I just want to kind of summarize here that, reporting is less important than the decisions that improve ROI. I really want to highlight that. I just think about, measurement, but also think about those decisions that you make. Agree on definitions with your C-level, set goals up front. Don't measure everything under the sun. I really like to pick a few things that you're really going to take action on. Think about the language. Again, we talked about, don't say cost per lead, talk about investment and return. A trusted marketing forecast, to me, it equals credibility. And so you want to really kind of have that as an aspirational goal. And, lastly, I want to end on this. Progress, not perfection. And the last time I checked, no data set's perfect. So don't go crazy on that. Just with the data you have, do the best you can. And I'll end there. You can follow me on Twitter at Heidi Bullock, and I'd love to, answer any questions you have at this time. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Heidi. And I am looking forward to our question and answer period today. I got to tell you, I like your takeaways, and I like that slide that showed where you can tell your CEO, okay, but it's going to have a 12% impact on sales next quarter. That's going to be a fun one. We do want to take your questions now, and we have a whole bunch of them. We have about 20 minutes to get through these. I'm going to start with a question from Randy Seal, who was one of our first people in the lobby this morning. Can marketing automation or B2B marketing programs integrate with open source web platforms like Drupal? Good question, Randy. A lot of people using open source platforms like that.
Yeah, that's a good question. And the best way I can explain it is, Marketo, our general philosophy, many of you may or may not know, we have a whole community called Launchpoint. And so our general philosophy is we're not going to create everything under the sun. I don't really see how any technology provider can. So we do our best to have, open source and support through APIs. So we really, with Drupal specifically, I would need to find out, but we do our best with all sorts of different technology providers to have APIs. So marketers can really pick the platforms and technologies that they want to plug into. And I do know there are a lot of folks that have actual applications where they put data into Marketo. So I'm happy to investigate that if we do support Drupal, but in general, our philosophy is to be open and really kind of support a lot of technology platforms.
Good answer. And I want to remind our audience that if you have a question for Heidi, you can go to our Q&A tab and put it there, and our host will gather those and put those into this table that I'm reading from. Next question comes from Jade Luo. Can you download the analytics data in bulk to do custom analysis and run your own pivot tables? Another good question. Thank you, Jade.
You absolutely can. I guess I don't know if I love pivot tables and I love Excel. It's actually I'm very relaxed working in Excel. It's probably my happy place. So some of you might think that's weird, but for me it's relaxing. So yes, in Marketo you absolutely can do that. I actually have a presentation later today where I've done that. I took all the data and we provide you with two options. For people that don't want to do that, there's kind of turnkey reports, but for people that like pivot tables and want to slice and dice the data across more parameters, you absolutely can do that. You can dump it into Excel and then really slice and dice the data however you want.
Good one. Heidi, our next question comes from Molly Parker. It's actually two parts.
Okay.
Let me read them both. That's a real practical, hands-on kind of question. Without driving to a landing page specific to the channel marketing, are there other ways to track the URL with a single source code that will help determine the lead or sales volume from that particular channel? Right now, our customer is having trouble differentiating between online channels driving conversions and attributing leads to them. UTM can work, but does Marketo have a proprietary option available?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's, when we say proprietary, I'm not sure I'm going to use that term, but yes, we do. So let me give you an example. My team runs many, many different programs. We run, on average, about 80 different programs in a month across multiple channels. So let me give you an example. We might run, multiple email programs, and I need to not only know that that's an email program, not to be confused with a webinar program or content syndication, but then I need other parameters in that URL to determine is that an email that we're sending to our database? Is it for customers or is it for potential customers? Is it for a particular vendor? So yes, we absolutely can support that. And again, for some of these more technical, specific Marketo questions, again, people feel free to email me. I'll give you my email address too, in case I'm not doing an adequate job addressing your questions. My email is hbullock@marketo.com, and I'm more than happy to send you more information on that. But yes, we absolutely can do that in Marketo.
Thanks a lot, Heidi. Daniel asked a question. You mentioned trying to get down to 3 to 5 dashboard metrics. It is super easy to overload our dashboards. Do you have some examples of B2B metrics that many people measure but probably shouldn't be measuring? Or conversely, are there typical metrics you think we need to focus on more?
Wow, that's an excellent question. And it's tricky, right? Because I think what I've noticed is across different companies that I meet and speak with, the answer is it's a tough one. It really depends, right? I know in the B2B space, tons of companies are interested in looking at CAC. That's a key metric that people like to look at. People love to look at the cost of customer acquisition and kind of retention rates over time. But and again, I'm more than happy to send you kind of a summary of metrics that I think are the most important and the ones that I look at. I kind of break them into two areas, and I showed this earlier, sort of those high-level metrics that maybe we would report in a board presentation and look at a quarterly basis, a yearly basis. And then, there's the metrics that my team is going to be looking at, like I said, on a monthly level, which are, what are the channels that are performing? Is it inbound channels? Is it our website? Is it webinars? And then within those, what's working? What isn't? So I can be using my dollars most effectively. But I weigh anything with that data. You're not putting any programs in place or using Net Promoter Score or having a program that is helping retention rate. That might not be the best metric for your company. So I'm a big believer in look at a few metrics that you're actually going to do something with and make improvements on. Otherwise, I think you can have crazy dashboards and be measuring tons of things that at the end of the day, maybe you just don't even have people or processes to support. So I hope that helps.
It does. I think what you're saying there is focus more on the philosophy of why you're looking at the metric rather than trying to predict which metric may be important to a particular company.
Right.
And
well, I'm just
advice.
Saying that it make sure it's a metric that then you're going to have activity around. And if you're just collecting data to collect it and it's going to sit on your desk or in some folder on your computer, it's just not going to help you.
Yeah, I think a lot of people make that mistake. Our next question comes from Sam Bewley. Can intelligent lead nurturing from Marketo, which seems to be email-based, extend to web personalization? I know that RTP, which I think is recently acquired from Insightera, has several dynamic widgets, but does this support B2B lead nurturing down the sales funnel?
Yeah, that's a great question. My answer to that would be yes. And again, I'm happy to send more information on RTP, which is something that Marketo supports called real-time personalization, and it enables folks on their website. And for many of you out there, most visitors to your website are anonymous. You don't know who they are. And based on IP address, Marketo has a solution that enables you to have a personal or tailored message to folks. So I'll give you an example. Maybe you have somebody that is a competitor coming to your site. You can have a specific message tailored to that competitor. Or maybe this is a great example, and we do this, you might have customers coming to your website versus potential customers. You probably want a different message for those different groups of people, and Marketo supports that. Now, as far as how that works with nurturing, I mean, there's different ways you can think about that, but my sense is with nurturing in general, you're really trying to me, the number one thing with nurturing is relevance and being personal and targeted, and I think real-time personalization helps do that. So I think if the question is, could you have that be an aspect of nurturing, I think the answer is, definitely yes. And we could kind of work on what that flow would look like. But to me, maybe what you have is your nurture stream set up with different types of content. But then again, if somebody is in a particular category of nurturing, I'm making this up, maybe they're a customer, you have a really nice tailored customer message for when somebody visits your website. So again, if I didn't answer that as specific as the person would like, I'm happy to answer that over email too.
Thank you. Our next question is from Courtney Caldwell. And this is a good one. This is one I'm kind of facing personally at work. Any advice on change management, specifically to experiment with including metrics that you haven't been focused on before, but that trends are suggesting are up and coming?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, I think that is a really good thing to do. I know change management is a very, very popular topic for people, especially in enterprise companies. And I would recommend, why not? If you think that there's something that you want to be looking at that's important, I would just go back to kind of the basic principles that we mentioned earlier, was just get buy-in from the key folks that you need that buy-in from. Illustrate to them, how you're tracking that metric, what process you have in place, and then kind of the value of the metric and why you're looking at it. Again, I think it's really around that communication piece. It's making sure, hey, everybody's on the same page for us to look at this metric. This is why, and this is why it's important. But as far as change management goes, really trying to illustrate why you want to do certain things and building a case. I'm guessing this is probably why you're looking at this metric. That's a great thing to do, and I've done a lot of that in my career, where I can remember being at a company where there was a lot of debate if we should, this is going to make some of you laugh, but be on Facebook. And so I had to collect a series of data and put together a whole case as to why we wanted to do this, and really kind of do a mini case study. And that was very successful and worked well for me. So hopefully that helps.
Great. Next question. Before I go here, I want to go through two reminders to our audience. One is that we still have about 10 minutes left, and you're welcome to submit more questions for the Q&A panel. We are paying attention to that, and they are getting asked. So please, if there's something on your mind, this is your opportunity, and I'm sure other people in the audience would appreciate it. The second thing is, please hang around to the end of the show so we can announce our winners for that valuable drawing that we're having. All right, now let's move on to a question from Fred. Can you talk about how Marketo implements the nurturing and content marketing cycles that you described in slide 35? Oh, he's taking notes, isn't he, Heidi? That's good.
Sure.
That's a good question, too.
What I'm happy to do, because that is it's a really good question and a great topic. I actually have a whole overview deck on how we do nurturing and how we set it up, and I'm more than happy to send that. But the way I can explain it for this webinar, and just to touch on this at a high level, is what I often see with nurturing is I always recommend people to start simple first. And I think the number one thing people can do is make sure that they have a really good content story for the particular group that they're nurturing and do that first. I often will see people put together, kind of a large number of nurture tracks and try to pull in content that, maybe it isn't like really mapped to the buying stage, just kind of what's available. And often I don't see that work well. And I'll give you an example. So for us, we might say, okay, we have a C-level group of folks that we're going to nurture. And so we really think about where they are in the buying cycle. Is it kind of awareness? Is it interest? Is it consideration? And then we really spend time to think about what content is needed at each of those phases. And then, with our engagement engine, it's really easy to put in content. You can just drag and drop it in. And one thing that we can do that I like is we can actually see what people are responding to. So I have a really good handle. Sometimes we're wrong, right? We add content in and we think, wow, that's going to be the best thing ever. And we see from our data, hey, people are not responding to that. So then we can switch in something else. But the number one thing I would say, and hopefully this is addressing the question, is come up with the key segments you want to nurture. Again, I would keep it very simple to start. And then I would make sure that you really think about the content, the story you're telling those segments, beginning to end, considering where somebody is in their buying cycle, and I would start there. And what's great, and again, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but with the way Marketo nurtures is we have a lot of great things that we can set up, such as we can do it based on behavior. So maybe somebody goes to your website and is interested in social. Well, you can basically set it up so that's what they're telling you, and you can make sure that they're in a social stream. Or we also have the ability to say, maybe this particular content is going to be exhausted. Maybe it's an analyst report, and let's put a deadline in there so somebody will not receive that after a certain point. So there's a lot that we can do with nurturing it. And to me, if you're in a company that is a considered purchase where, somebody's not, what I'm saying is they're not going to go to Amazon and buy, perfume. It's something that, again, that it's a long sales cycle. Nurturing is critical, and doing that well is a very, very important thing.
You're reminding me how much fun I had at the Marketo conference recently at San Francisco. There were just so many great sessions going on about how to use Marketo in ways I had no idea could be used. I use Marketo on a daily basis, by the way, so
wow,
I'm one of your customers. Erin Brody really has two questions for us, so let me ask them one at a time. Curious, when running 80 programs a month, how do you support that in terms of headcount?
Oh, that's a great question. I get asked that a lot. And something that will surprise many of you, well, maybe it will, maybe it won't. My team that does the 80 programs, and I'm really not exaggerating when I say that. When I look at it, it's pretty, it kind of blows my mind. And when I started at Marketo about 3 years ago, we definitely were not running as many programs. And let me give you an example of what I mean by a program, because I think that's an important thing to define. That will mean an email program. That will mean a social program. So maybe we're doing something on Twitter. We use website cards or lead gen cards. Or maybe that is a content syndication program, which we run quite a few of. And the number of folks that I have running those programs is, at the end of the day, about 4 people. I used to do a lot of the programs, but now I have a team of about 4 people, and they set those programs up and run them. But this is the trick, and this is what I want to highlight to folks, that in using marketing automation, specifically Marketo, and again, I don't want this to be an ad for Marketo, but what it is, it enables you to scale your programs. And let me give you the best example. This summer, my team ran a 16-city roadshow, and we have 3 that we're doing outside of that internationally. Now, if you think about that, setting up a program to do that, that means a landing page, that means an email, that means follow-up emails. If you wanted to do that step by step and do each city, that means different art for the city, that means different hotel details. I mean, that's a nightmare. And I personally, a long time ago, I used an email tool, not Marketo, where I did that manually. And you basically, your life is not fun having to do that. You start to feel like you're just, it's crazy. But with Marketo, and again, I'm just giving you this as an example, what you do is you create one program with, say, one city, say San Francisco, and I essentially right-click and I clone that program. And then we have what are called tokens. And so I can say, okay, now for Boston, I'm just going to flip in different art, a different kind of venue, and then I'm set. So ability for us to run that many programs is really because we were using marketing automation, and we can clone a lot of the programs we have set up. And again, we're Marketo. We've done this for a long time, so we're pretty fast and we're pretty good at it. But at the end of the day, I do have 4 people doing this. At my last company where I ran marketing, I brought on Marketo, and I had initially a team of myself and one other person, and we didn't run 80 programs, but we did quite a few. And again, it was the number one reason was because we could scale using a tool like Marketo. And if we had to build everything out from scratch each time, it wouldn't be pretty. I hope that addressed the question.
I think it did. Very good. And I'm going to ask Garen's second question real quickly. It's more of a yes or no. Also, are you leveraging external content in your campaigns? I feel like I've noticed that from your newsletters.
Wow, that's cool. That's a great question. And we have an internal team that writes content. Again, it's not a big team right now. We average between 1 to 2 people, and then we have a lot of internal folks that will contribute. But yes, we do on occasion. To me, we use like third parties, like analyst papers. That's definitely content that we leverage. We, for the most part, if it's Marketo thought leadership, we do the majority of that writing. There are occasions where we will use outside writers to help us out, like if there's a particular project that needs to be turned around quickly. And I'll be honest with you, I know folks at different companies that provide marketing automation, and many of them are using outside folks because, again, just scaling and getting that amount of content is tricky. But for our big thought leadership pieces, like our definitive guides, and we have one that will be coming out pretty shortly on content, there's an internal person that wrote that. But I do want to highlight this. I have a cool presentation and some ideas around scaling content and nice kind of ways that you can do that in a way that you're not going to need a huge team, because at the end of the day, a lot of us, myself included, I just don't have a budget for a team of like 10 content writers. I wish I did. That would be awesome. But it's not going to happen anytime soon. So I think that there's tricks that you can do for creating a lot of content. But then, yes, I think if you can use some external people, if they're good, I would do that. Okay, great. We have about 1 minute left, and I'm going to try to ask 2 questions. So, Heidi, I'm going to ask you to answer these in about 30 seconds each. Okay. All right. Sam Bewley asked, he actually notices that Marketo was recently featured in Forrester's Marketing Suite report. Nice for you guys. Is Marketo planning on introducing more native solutions or acquire solutions such as CMS to offer a full suite? Or will you take more of a best-of-breed approach? That's an awesome question. And again, I'll try to answer this really quickly. I don't know of every, company or technology will acquire, but what we are doing, and again, I just will touch on LaunchPoint, and you can go to our website and look at a lot of our, partners and tools. We just plan to be open. At the end of the day, we just want to be a platform that supports marketers. And again, I mentioned this earlier, there's no way we will create every product under the sun and be the best folks for doing that. So our philosophy is, our core competencies, we're going to continue to innovate and push the envelope there, but, making sure that we have great APIs to integrate with other solutions. That's really kind of our philosophy, and not really locking people into, only the tools that we say. We just don't believe in that. Okay. I'm going to ask you to answer the next one in as quickly as you can, because we're almost out of time. This is from Bryce. Does the Marketo revenue... need to elaborate? Feel free to email me or send me, something over Twitter, and I can get them the info. But yes. Super. Thank you so much, Heidi. It's really terrific answers. And now I'm going to go to our contest winners today. This is an exciting moment. We need another drum roll, I think, and I'm going to get down to the list that's being sent to me. And our giveaway winners for those valuable tickets are Luke Coupons, and I hope I'm saying that right, Luke. It's a CEUPPENS. And Sam Bewley, who is one of our questioners today. Thank you, both of you. And I'm going to list 3 backup winners: Jim Garvey, Chelsea Levengood, and David Tron. Congratulations to all of you. Those are valuable tickets. I hope you enjoy that show. I want to thank everybody for being with us, especially Heidi and Marketo for sponsoring this program, but also our friends at CMSWire, Candace Quee, John Lewis, Bryce Dunwoody, and I want to remind you that this webinar has been recorded. Video and a recap article will be emailed to you and available on CMSWire.com within a day or two. I want to invite you to come and talk to us about sponsoring the webinar. If that's to your pleasure,
please email us at advertising@cmswire.com. Signing off for CMS Wire, Simpler Media, and Marketo, this is Tom Murphy. Thank you for being with us.